back to Manhattan Project and the war, or building the railroads, or any other large effort that may have involved considerable collaborative structures. Are these things becoming, is there some historical unprecedentedness of what we're seeing, or are we just
I think so.
using different language to
No,
describe?
I think so. You think of the world of diplomacy. We have treaties with our friends, and we process those, we manage them, we operate embassies. But you think of the doing of that, say in the 1950s, the doing of that in 2013 is a very different game. The rapidity of communication.
And the dependencies. The dependencies are more significant today than they were in the past. I mean, in the past you could operate independently, but today, for example, there's this wonderful Wall Street Journal article that's just totally surprising about supply chains for auto parts. I mean, the interrelationship between, Toyota, Honda, Ford, in terms of buying auto parts from the same suppliers, I mean, it just, now the problem becomes, it's not an independent problem for each to solve. It becomes a broader the interrelationship. Other thoughts?
George, I'm curious how your sphere might inform the way we study collaboration in the future.
You may have noted that in this room today there are 2 or 3 honest to gosh, genuine specialists in collaboration. And I have shamelessly walked on their turf. I speak of Professor Sylvia, Professor Kessler. I don't know the answer to that. I think it is useful to have things graphically represented. I think visual metaphors are really helpful. And I also think it's helpful to attempt to reduce findings to 1 or 2 sentence generalization. And that's what I've attempted to do today. But my own personal body of research is not in this. So I do think, however, it's remarkably important, and that some of the best scholars in the field are working in this territory. I think that's good.
George, may I ask you a question? The notion of collaboration and having to do with kind of integration, right? Integrating activities more, dropping boundaries, focusing more on similarities and differences. But at the same time, with this incredible emphasis on branding and differentiating ourselves, and if this is so if the collaboration is the future, why don't we see more jurisdictions merging their boundaries and branding? And that's all about differentiation, not integration.
Yeah, and I think differentiation is here to stay. It's the way we have it. It's the means by which we have it both ways. We can keep good old Prairie Village. Oh, I love Prairie Village. But we can work with Olathe, we can work with Lenexa, and we can go down to Mark, and we can get David Warren to come give us a talk and show us how we can work together. So we can have Prairie Village and work together. And the Big 12 is the way by which our university can generally do what it wishes to do, but in athletics, can't participate with other universities. It seems to me that we have both, and that there's some give and take. That the University of Kansas gives up some of its authority, some of its power to the Big 12, and certainly to the NCAA, by definition. When you fly from Kansas City to X, you're giving up some of your authority. You're at the mercy of how well that pilot is trained, whether the gas, the jet fuel has been properly taken care of, etc.
kind of examples of collaboration I can think of too. That's why I'm trying to go online. The Big Ten conference. That is now more than 10 now, right? It was a jump ship I couldn't even keep track of. Now in Big Ten, we're not. Another example would be even recently here, Kansas versus Missouri and all these text competition issues. And so why would collaboration exist and persist or sustain, and why would some collaboration break down and jump ship? Is it all economics or is it something else?
I'm not sure you can generalize. There are unique reasons. I think of the Texas A&M example, and it does seem to me that there was a unique pattern of dislike and distrust between Texas and Texas A&M. Makes no sense otherwise. That's
Yet they're being asked, in this case of Alfred, they're being asked from the economic model to etch out a place in a schedule every 2 years to play a game,
yes.
right, with one another despite their set schedules within their conferences.
Same's happening with KU
Right,
and
exactly.
Missouri and basketball. So again, wanting it both ways.
Chris?
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what Hudson Bangham referred to as the ambiguity of representativeness. So each of those forms surrounding that sphere that we don't really see, each of those are different organizations. And that organization will send someone to work in that collaborative. That person represents the agency from where they normally reside in the network. As part of the network, they kind of start potentially getting into situations where the network wants one thing, their home agency wants one thing, they personally want one thing, and maybe the stakeholders of their home agency want another thing, and the stakeholders of all the other groups want something else. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on how that collaborative participant kind of balances all of those different pulls on them to make that sphere.
Your point's very well taken. You may remember, as I was trying to describe the characteristics of these organizations, that what happens in the sphere is negotiation, deliberation, and I do take that very seriously. And there's also that part where it describes the type of person who is most effective at that, and that implies there are types of persons who aren't very effective at that. So let's say you send Bruce over to do this, and Bruce is terribly sure of himself, rude to others, or vice versa. So representativeness is incredibly important. And I also think there's a problem of over-delegation. So you get the city manager that says to the deputy city manager, you go represent the interests of the city, take care of that. Don't bother with it. Depending on how good that assistant city manager is,
So we've got the CH2 Hill thing, looking at public project. Then we bring Rebecca on to kind of lead us toward nonprofit work. Do you think that what's happening at the University of Kansas is consistent with what's happening in the academic field of public administration? Where is it going to address bureaucrats without borders?
no, I think we're behind. I think that there are pockets of research and teaching and curriculum that are, if not up to date, that are pretty timely. But the field is really changing, and changing rapidly. And so long as we continue to do what we do best, and that's preparing young people for jurisdictional work, without preparing them equally for work in the sphere, I think we fall behind. Now, if one were to ask, and you'd be a good one, where is that being done well? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I can think of 2 or 3 scholars who I greatly admire who do this work. And their research and publications are all helpful. What they're teaching, what the curriculum of their MPA degree is or isn't, what their doctoral program looks like. I also think that there's a tendency, the field has changed. It's increasingly the case that those of us who become faculty members are taking doctorates in public administration. 30 years ago, doctorates in public administration were relatively rare. So we had political scientists, we had economists, we had sociologists who would take these different views. And I think we lose something there. Finally, I am convinced as to the importance of communication. And I look at our own faculty and how wonderful it would be to have an honest-to-gosh special in administrative communication who've known GPS and that whole world is so complicated and so big and so important that not having our students exposed to that seems to me to be a problem.
Other questions, comments?
Well, thank you all very much. I only have one more to go. I'm retiring before your very eyes.